What is up, my friend? Welcome to episode number 30. This episode is all about the art of closing sales. It has been said that sales is the lifeblood of any business. Now, I have found time and time again when I talk about ways to increase sales on any of my social media channels, people seem to love the information. So I thought to myself, why don't I bring them someone to help them hone their sales skills? And lo and behold, today's guest is Tiji Thomas of unsellingschool.com. He had reached out to me and he asked to be on this podcast. So I did some digging and I felt like, man, he'd have a lot to share with you. So if you're ready to up-level your sales skills, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to the Anthony John Amix podcast, the one and only podcast designed to help you become unstoppable in life and business. My name is Anthony John Amix. My friends call me AJ. And my goal with this podcast is to help you remember who you truly are so you can maintain your center in the chaos, embody your potential, and unlock freedom in your life and business. That being said, let's get into today's show. And we are back. So let me tell you a little bit about Tiji because, I don't do these huge, long, crazy intros of guests on this show. I just enjoy letting them speak for themselves and kind of just keeping the vibe of the show very conversational yet strategical, you know what I mean? So let me tell you a little bit about Tiji. He helps coaches, consultants, course creators, and service providers turn strategy calls or free sessions into paying clients using a no-pressure, integrity-based system that aligns with your client's core values and beliefs. And at the time of this recording, in the past 12 years, Tiji has produced over $150 million in revenues for his company, and he has produced as much as $150,000 in 2 weeks using the same system that he teaches his students. And time again, he's found selling is a lot easier when you understand the sales process and the psychology in dealing with your future customers or partners. And one of my intentions with having Tiji on this episode specifically is to help you understand what a solid sales mindset is and how you can increase your income immediately. Now, before I bring Tiji on, I want to let you know about my book called Mindset is Not Enough. It's about the ancient secret many entrepreneurs are using to scale their business, lead their teams, and find fulfillment. Now, you can grab that for free by going to ajamix.com/book. And I'll tell you right now, it will make everything that you learn in this episode so much more powerful and effective. Now, why is this? Is it because it has to do with sales? No, absolutely not. It's because it talks about the important foundation that must be in place if you want to leverage sales ridiculously powerfully. I will not take the time to talk about what that is in detail here because I tell you that's its own episode in of itself. Yet know this. Most people understand the mindset camp and the strategic action camp, right? Which TG and I will be talking about a lot during this episode. But these two camps don't mean anything unless you have the body set camp on lockdown as well. And that's the part of my book called Mindset is Not Enough really helps you to understand and really leverage. So make sure you go grab that book for free at www.ajamix.com/book. So with that being said, I've set the stage properly. So let's bring Tiji Thomas onto the podcast. Cool, man. So we'll get started. Let's get a few things set up. And pronouncing your name is Tiji, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah, just like Tiji.
Tiji? Awesome. Well, Tiji, welcome to the podcast, brother. Happy to have you here.
Anthony, it's great to be here.
Awesome, dude. Well, today we're going to be diving into pretty much the mindset and the skill set of sales. And we'll be talking about that stuff, why it's important and all of that. But before we do, a lot of people really asked me to take the time to really dive into more people's stories, which I didn't know that. I thought people just want to know the tactics, the tools, but they actually wanted to hear people's stories. I thought there was plenty of that on podcasts, but it's what they asked for. So I thought we'd give them that, a little bit more information in your story. So with that being said, I want to know what was your life before, what was your life like before you understood the game of sales? And then ultimately, what was kind of the pivot point? What was the wake up moment for you to wake up to the potential of sales? And now getting into this place where you've generated, $150 million in revenue for your company. What is life like for you now? Let's just kind of go through that prison to paradise if you're open to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from Philadelphia originally. I live in Sugar Land, Texas. My wife's the Texan, so we ended up moving away from the cold. So I grew up in Philadelphia, and I've always had I've been entrepreneurial since I was about 15, doing little, side hustles and newspaper routes and subcontracting out my newspaper routes when I was really young. But I went to the traditional route. I'm from South India originally. I was born in South India, so we're strong. The parenting that time was doctor, engineer. There wasn't as much IT stuff as always doctor, engineer. So I went to school for engineering. Didn't really like it as much, so I switched to math, which was my true love. And then I started working in the inner city schools in Philadelphia. And that actually is really the main driving force for what I actually do today, what I learned during that time. So I went the traditional route. I was in education 11 years. And then I got into more traditional selling. And I really did not like the way sales was taught to me. I was good at it, but it was a lot of it was high pressure. Just didn't really care what the customer experience was. Just get the sale one way or the other. And the interesting thing, and I mean, I talk about it with my students, is that most salespeople will never want to be sold to the way that they sell. And I said to myself, if I'm not comfortable, if I don't feel good about the way that I'm selling, like to myself, then I'm just not going to sell that way. So what happened was, as I got into sales, I went back to my initial education or my initial job, and I was working with inner city children, and we had to teach them algebraic calculus concepts only by asking questions. We weren't allowed to make any statements. It was a special program. It was actually not a math program per se, as much as a self-esteem program. But the thing is, these kids were learning, like most people had given up on these children, and they were thinking, oh, they're special education, they're smart. And all we did is we start asking questions to build upon previous successes and really get them to open up. So I went back and looked at what I did during that time to formulate what I call my unselling system today. And yeah, the rest is history. It's been great. So I really enjoyed that time because I love helping the kids, and they got so much value out of it. But it really helped me later on as well, because I revisited all the things that I did, how I asked a question, how I built those successes. And, it has not been an easy slope. And if anyone is watching, listening is an entrepreneur and they got on their first shot, it's rare if that ever happens. I haven't met anyone like that. It's usually a lot of failures. But that's where it all started. It all started with learning that, and then getting into sales, falling on my face a lot, and then getting to where I am today.
So what led you into like becoming a sales trainer and sales rather than being a teacher?
So I always tell people, if I got paid, six figures to teach, I probably wouldn't have left
Okay.
because it was really rewarding. I wasn't actually a teacher. It was more a supplemental program outside
Okay.
of the schools. So we actually got paid really, really low. It was not that great of a pay. And after I got married, I was still I've been married 22 years. This year will be 23 years. And at that time, it was not that much money coming in, for doing what I was doing. So the way I look at it right now when I'm with coaching, it's teaching, really. It's what it is, and that's something that I do enjoy. And I used to work mostly with salespeople. I mean, that's what I am, right? But I moved to working with coaches more than just people that do sales, because one thing I found about coaches is they actually are not always worried about making money. It's always they want to make an impact in the world. They want to change people's lives. And that's more with what I wanted. I wanted to have more of an impact. So the way I look at it is I have an impact now for people to have a big impact on more people, because I don't, mince a lot of things that I do. I'm really good at getting people to convert in an ethical way. But I know that if I can show coaches and consultants how to do that, they're going to have more people to serve. So
Awesome.
it's just teaching. It's just a little different.
What was that high pressure experience that you talked about where you're like, man, I don't ever want to be selling in that manner? What was that for you?
It was basically, just sell to object. It's almost like they invited objections, and they just said, do what you got to do to get to the end of the presentation, get objections, and then overcome objections. The whole thing was about overcoming objections, no matter what. Just get that person to say yes. Whereas what I do now is I do everything I can not to get objections, because if you could do a presentation, like if you're a coach, and most of my students and clients, they don't get objections because of the way that I teach. But back then it was more like, it doesn't matter what they say. Everyone's going to say some things. It was a script that was heavy with a lot of techniques, just to get them to the end. And then no matter what they said, it's just overcome objections. So it really, even if the product or service wasn't a good fit, it didn't really matter. They just wanted you to get the yes. So
Makes sense.
that's where the high pressure was. Yeah.
And do you feel like we're at a place, kind of in humanity and society currently, where the hard pressure tactics they're not working like they used to the 80s, the early 90s, and so like there's almost like this transition that salespeople are having to make from the old way of doing things to a new way of doing things. Otherwise, the buyer is just like, I'll just go work with somebody else. Do you find that's becoming more and more true?
Yeah, there's much more of an educated consumer. Like when I was growing up in sales, they didn't have social media. Consumer reports was just getting big. The internet, there was really no internet when I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
right? So all these things are new. So there's more avenues for people to get educated. But the way I look at it is selling is it's evergreen, right? You're always this is I mean, since the day of Socrates to now, that's not going to happen. There's a seller and buyer in every situation. I don't care if you're a parent trying to get your kids to eat, broccoli. There's a selling situation going on in in most areas of life. Coaches and consultants, I find that sometimes they don't look at themselves as salespeople, and that's one of the problems because there is a sell going on. But because we have a much more educated consumer, we have to make sure that we really not just give them the benefits, because most people don't have to give them benefits, but people have to see there's a transformation that they're going to get, because there's so many things out there. There's so many things that you do, that I do, that it seems like there's a bunch of coaches out there. What's going to differentiate what you do there from the next person, right? And you don't want to be perceived as a commodity, because if that's the way it is, it's going to be based just on price, and that's not what you want.
Awesome, dude. What do you find was like the biggest obstacle that you faced when it came to kind of mastering this whole game of sales?
It was the biggest obstacle was that it was hard to, like a lot of the trainings that I would find out there, it was always geared towards technique-based sales instruction, not as much ethical, integrity-based programs. And some of the biggest guys out there, I'm not going to name any names, but some of the biggest guys out there, they're really, pound your chest, say how great you are, and that's the environment that's created. And I guess in some sales, I mean, if it's short term or if it's cold calling, the different types of sales, that may work. But I just try to distance myself from that. So I would say that really finding good people to follow that really emulated what I want, or talk about what I wanted to emulate, was a bit of a challenge. So that's why I devised my own.
Okay.
I created my own program.
Awesome, dude. And what has been your biggest personal breakthrough around this whole sales game so far?
The biggest breakthrough was I was really good at selling myself.
Yeah.
And I was, I've done well over $250 million worth of high ticket sales myself. But the biggest breakthrough was when I was able to teach other people how to have breakthroughs in their business. So that's so it's going from being an actual salesperson to actual trainer of what I do. So and that's why I enjoy what I do, is just to help people. So yeah, so that would be the biggest one, the transition.
Now, was there like a personal breakthrough? So let me give you one of mine, and maybe it'll help set some context. So for me, I used to fucking hate sales. Like I hated fucking sales. I hated the objection. I hated the whole fucking thing, because I didn't feel like I was in control. I felt like I was giving and giving and giving and giving and giving, and people were taking and taking and taking and taking. So there's been multiple breakthroughs personally for me in the game of sales. One of those is realizing that givers have to set boundaries because takers rarely do. So I had to learn how to stop giving and giving and actually learn the game of psychology and lead people through a sequence to help them align with the truth of where they're at and where they want to go, and then position myself as the gap, right? That was a huge breakthrough. Another huge breakthrough for me was actually reading Oren Klaff's Pitch Anything, because I understood for the first time after reading the book, sales is a game. Now, I grew up as an athlete. I love playing soccer, very high level, high competitive. And in the game, like I wouldn't get pissed off if somebody took the ball away from me. You know what I mean? Like that happened. Right. I would just like run, sprint, maybe grab a shirt, grab some shorts or whatever it is, give them a little bump on the elbow or the little shoulder and get the ball back, and then figure out where I wanted to go for the next play. Once I understood that sales was nothing more than a bit of frame control, some psychology, some communication skills, like it just became a game, became fun. It wasn't attached to my worth, my value as a human. It just became fun. Those are some of my personal breakthroughs. So have you had any of those types of personal breakthroughs yourself in the game of sales?
Yes. Let me kind of frame it this way. And I played competitive soccer too for a couple of years. I used to love soccer.
So good.
Yeah. So mine is really dialing in the marketing, because you're absolutely right. If there's certain situations that if you market to everyone, the way I look at it, you're not marketing to.
Totally agree.
If you sell to everyone, you're not marketing. So that's the way that I approach it. So in my unselling training, when I teach it, the framework I do is connect, discover, present, and then close. And the closing, I call it, my students all know, as MBO, mutually beneficial outcome. Really wanted to be a win-win situation. But in that connecting phase, part of it's the marketing to set up that call.
Awesome.
because you want to dial it down. You don't have to talk to everybody that's out there if they don't. Because the other thing is, they're just not interviewing you. You're interviewing them as well. I mean, there's people I've turned away because didn't think we want to make good sense as like, because one of the things that you said, that they're just asking questions, they're not doers, they're excuse makers, things like that. I don't want to work with those type of people.
Exactly.
So I tell coaches, you don't have to work with everyone that books a strategy call. And that's a challenge sometimes, because people are like, oh man, I just want to make a sale, or I want to make money, or I need to make this sale, which is one of the worst ways to do anything, is having to make money. Because if you have to make money, you're not always going to be thinking clearly. So I would say the breakthrough was actually dialing in the marketing to, asking the right questions, and also positioning myself as an expert, because before I went into a call, when I initially did it, I didn't do that. Now, every time they know who they're speaking with, that, hey, I'm an expert at what I do. And I teach that to my students as well. It makes a big difference.
Huge.
So the breakthrough would be learning and then positioning. So now when I get on a call, they know who I am. They've gone through different filters to make sure that they can afford the program, that they understand what we're all about. Even on my landing pages, I even actually put what my ideal client looks like, so they know what to expect on the call. So I don't get on calls with people that are, just trying to waste time or not serious.
Yeah. So good. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's almost like you had to slow down to go fast, so a lot of people be like, no, I have to do this now, and you're like, whoa, hold up. Let's not try to create from a place of scarcity, because scarcity reaps scarcity. So let's start there. Let's get to a place of like confidence and certainty first, and if that means you need to go do something to make some income so you're not creating from scarcity, you may want to do that before you start a business, right?
Yeah.
Or try to grow the business. And then from there, it sounds like, getting the marketing pieces right, the websites, creating these filters essentially that then really allow you to, when people do decide to book calls, they're very targeted, and a lot more, I guess, like congruent with kind of the game that you want to play. Is that right?
Yeah, because the call really is not to just coach them on whatever you want to coach them on. It's to figure out if you're going to work well together, and then get them on as a client. That's when the coaching starts, not actually on that call. And a lot of times people talk about overcoming objections. You don't have to overcome. I mean, first off, it's not like, hey, what about this? Let me overcome that, you become my client. Mine is more to give clarity. If someone's not clear on something, I clarify for them. But I'm not there to turn skeptics into believers and those type of things. That should be kind of done beforehand.
Awesome.
So yes, I would definitely say those filters to get them on the call to find out if you're a good fit, really.
Brilliant, dude. Why do you feel sales is an important skill set for entrepreneurs to master? I mean, shouldn't they just kind of delegate sales? Because so many people do want to delegate high ticket sales these days. So I'm just curious what your perspective is.
Yeah, so I've got my own sales team as well. I have a team that I've trained with the unselling process, and that's for that reason. So I tell every entrepreneur, coach, consultant that it's good to do sales yourself first, just so you kind of get a feel for it. Then that way, if you do have a team working for you, you kind of know what they've gone through. But if you're scaling, right? If you want to, and just doing 3 or 4 calls at a time, but then if you're getting all these leads coming in, it's going to be really impossible for you to do it yourself. So then you do want to eventually bring people in. I don't suggest people bring somebody in unless you've done some calls yourself. But it's super important, because most entrepreneurs and coaches that I talk to really are not that good with selling. They're not that good with it. But here's the difference. If you're not good with Facebook ads or, Instagram ads and all that kind of stuff, sometimes there's a little technology involved that makes it a little more complicated. So I can see why people outsource it. But selling is a mindset. It really is. And if you can overcome that mindset and just say to yourself, I'm going to figure this out, it's going to be an amazing journey. Because what I find with coaches and consultants, they just want to teach. They just want to, help people and things. You can't do that on that call. If you do that on that call, what's going to happen is if Anthony's giving me all this information on the strategy call, thinking, oh, I'm going to help this guy and give him all this advice. What I'm going to tell Anthony at the end is, Anthony, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Let me implement some of that, and then I'll get back to you. Then you just lose that sale. So people don't understand. Man, I don't understand. I'm coaching my butt off on this call, and I'm not getting clients, because that's not what that call is, designed for. So this is such a valuable tool that people can get better at. And as a whole, when I see people, what they do, it's something that is challenging for a lot, but it's not because they can't do it. It's because they don't focus on it.
Yeah, it makes sense, man. And this thing that you're talking about where people give and they coach too much, I have seen this
Okay.
time and time again. And ultimately, it's actually a disservice to the client because you give them a false sense of that they can do it without you. And the reality is they can't. Like, even if you gave them the greatest information, they're still not going to be able to do it without you because they'd already had done it if they could do it without you or without somebody's help, right? So it's a huge disservice to the client to like give what I call giving band-aids away when people are like hemorrhaging blood. You're like, oh, here's a few band-aids, good luck, right? I know,
Absolutely.
like, stop
I
giving
would,
the band-aids and like align with the truth and put on the sales cap.
absolutely. I went to when my daughter's starting law school this fall, and I went to a seminar for one of the schools making a pitch. And what he was saying about attorneys, which I didn't really think about, which is true, is you are having people's lives in your hand. He said, if you're not serious about being an attorney, you need to think about this. You literally have people's lives. So sometimes if you're not criminal, even if you do business, immigration law, whatever you have people's lives in your hands. So I did a training or I forgot a video, or Facebook Live, and I centered around that visit. And I talked to the coaches and said, listen, for that reason that you just said, you have to think of this as you're doing them a disservice. I mean, if they leave that call thinking I'm going to try this and I'll get back to you, and newsflash, they're most likely not going to get back to you. All right, you've done them a disservice. So literally, I tell people, if you're on a call, you have their life, you have their future in your hands, and do everything in your power. And you can do it ethically. You don't have to do it high pressure. People's like, well, are you just trying to get a yes no matter what? No, that's not the way it works. You can do it ethically. Integrity-based selling is still selling. It's not like you're not trying to get a yes. If you believe you can change your life, you do everything as long as legal, moral, ethical to get them to say that yes. But I always tell people to just start thinking differently, that you have their future in your hands.
Yeah, dude.
Absolutely.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I truly believe that people's lives are on the line. You know, if you're a relationship coach, their fucking marriage is on the line, or their intimacy is on the line, or their connection with their children is on the line. In the game of business, like their household income is on the line. Like, there are lives at stake, and maybe that's a little extreme, but that perspective has really, really served me. And like, when I run my quarterly events, like, I look at it like, dude, there's people here whose lives are on the fucking line. You know, Tony Robbins talks about this because somebody asked him in his documentary, I'm Not Your Guru, which those listeners,
Right.
if you haven't seen, it's really great. They're like, well, what do you do like in this intense situation? He's like, there's somebody's life on the line. Like, I have to show up. Like, losing is not an option. Like, it's in his mind, the
Exactly.
the not having a breakthrough is not an option because somebody's life is on the fucking line. You know what I mean? So huge,
Absolutely.
beautiful mindset to have in the game of sales.
Yeah, and then what I always tell people, exactly for that reason, I always tell people to take the word try out of your vocabulary. One of the worst words for business people is try. I hear that all the time, and I'm like, why do you try it? So I have my own mentors and coaches. If I don't get stuff done that I know I'm supposed to, I don't care how much stuff, workload, and I may have legit excuses. I may even go to the emergency room. But I know when I get on my call with my mentor, if I told them I tried to get it done, I know what to expect. I don't even say anything. I just say I didn't get it done. So to me, it's either you get stuff done or you don't, because that built-in word "try" it's really for you, not for anybody else.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to give it what I think is my best, but if I didn't make it, it's okay, because I tried. So it's like that old Star Wars thing. I'm sure you've seen with Yoda, where he says there's no try, right? It's only do
Yep.
or not do. That's it.
That's
So
it.
so that's the thing, and he's so right. And you like, man, I can't almost get a breakthrough. I've got to get this thing done. I got to talk this person off the ledge, or
Yeah.
bad things can happen. So
So good, dude. What do you feel like is a solid sales mindset that one really has to embody to really show up powerfully in this game of sales?
mindset, like what to do on the actual call.
No, just like mindset. So, you have a mindset of, we'll get into some mechanics of what to do on the call, but I'm talking about like from a mindset place, like what is a solid sales mindset, a perspective that a person, we've talked about one, which is, people's lives are on the line. That's a mindset. So what's another mindset that you really feel is important for somebody to be in a place of power when it comes to selling?
Well, one of the things that I always share with my students is don't just show up. I mean, don't show up. Don't look at this as a job. This is actually a business. And if it is a business and you want to make that impact we just talked about, don't just show up. I mean, many people, from the time the appointment is booked to that call, there's like no contact, no emails, or maybe a reminder about a schedule, but there's no prep work done. They have no idea who they're going to be speaking with. It's just like, hey, I'm going to show up and do it. So one of the biggest mindsets I have is don't just show up. It's actually prepare for that person. Again, if you have their life in their line, then it's important to know as much as you can about their situation and that industry also. Like I've had people that tell me, I don't know what I'm doing. I keep getting the same objection at the end of the call. And I'm like, well, what do you do? What have you done beforehand? Do you practice? Have you done prep work? So yeah, I would say it's just don't show up. Don't show up, be prepared.
Brilliant, man. And I want to go back and circle back to this whole delegating. So you said they should do sales for a period of time. What is that period of time when you feel like, okay, I've arrived to point A, now it's time for me to delegate? What do you feel is point A for most coaches and consultants?
Most of the people that I talk to really don't enjoy the sales part. I mean, when I used to just work with salespeople, that's all they did. So they got to enjoying it. So I'm trying to think of the number. I would say at least 10 strategy calls is what I would say, just to get, not just a couple, just get a good solid 10. And what happens with several students is they actually end up enjoying it. The challenge that I find is most of them want to coach. They just want to coach. They don't want to actually work on customer acquisition or client acquisition. They just want to coach. And the other thing is leads. They just think that, hey, I'm just going to get as many leads as I can get and do what I got to do with these leads, or I need better leads. And really, it's just not always better leads. If you've ever seen Glenn Ross, have you ever seen that movie?
No.
With Alec Baldwin, it's always referenced to where he's talking. It's the one, if you've ever seen Alec Baldwin memes, where he's always talking about, it's not the leads, it's you. Now
is that Boiler Room?
No, Boiler Room's different. This is actually about real estate, but it's definitely worth the watch. Awesome. I don't agree with the way that he does a lot of things, but I was bringing that up because it's a cool movie to watch. It's actually a really good movie, but the sales part will stick in your mind. They use a lot of high pressure tactics, but the one thing that he did say that I agree with is about the leads. He talks about it's not the leads. It's definitely not leads. You think it's leads. And that's the thing that I tell people, when you think it's the leads, you're going to make every excuse. Now, a lot of sales gigs that I've started, what they usually do is they give you old leads that people give up on. And I tend to convert 20 to 30% of people's leads that are dead, have been dead for 2 years. And it's because of the way that I approach it. So I would say, if you're a coach, entrepreneur, do at least 10, but get out of coaching and get into more listening. And the more you listen, then you'll be able to talk about your services. People just talk about how great their coaching is. Nobody cares. Nobody cares how great your coaching is if it doesn't apply to something that they've got a pain with, right? So if they got a pain or they're trying to get to a pleasure. So if you are a good coach, you should also be a good listener. And if you're a good listener, you can actually get really good at sales in your strategy calls, because a lot of it's just listening and then helping your future client out with what they need help with. So I would say get to doing at least 10 of them and then see what happens, because you may end up liking it and want to do more of them. So.
Perfect. And now let's kind of define sales, because I think a lot of people may think of sales high pressure, right? Boiler Room, Wolf on Wall Street. And that's a type of sales. And I'm not here to say that type of selling is good or bad or right or wrong. It's a style. And if that empowers you, fantastic. That style specifically does not empower me at all. So I'm just curious, how would you define sales? Like, what would you, how would you define sales?
How do I define sales? I mean, sales basically is when there's two or more parties that are meeting and with some agenda, and typically in the way sales are, one party goes away the victor, like they get the other, entity or individual to buy into their viewpoint. Mine is actually when it's the same thing in the beginning, but when it's consummated, that one party is not the victor, both parties leave as victors. In a win-win situation. So, I mean, selling, a lot of times people just look at selling as in traditional selling, like, going to buy a TV or a mattress, or like in our case, coaching programs, or getting a digital marketing package or a funnel. So they always look at it as something that's, hey, I need to go buy something. But selling is just in any situation. I used to a child parents with, trying to get the kids to eat vegetables, but you talked about intimacy, dating, things like that. Relationships. I mean, if you have a girlfriend or boyfriend or spouse, significant other, you got to sell them that you're worthy of being a good partner, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thing with sales is, but the thing is, you don't want, even those you don't want to have a inequitable, what's what I'm looking for, percentage of the relationship. It's got to be 50-50s typically that it works that well when both of them, or 100-100, right?
Yeah,
When
it has to be a win-win. It can't be a lose-win or a win-lose. It has to be, win-win. Win for this person, a win for the other person.
Absolutely. So that's my definition, is that it's the same intro, but the end result is it's a win-win.
Awesome, dude. And what do you think are the common myths about sales most people have?
That the common myths, give me one of them, and I'll tell you. If you have a bunch of them, I'll either say fact or truth.
Sure. I don't have any listed, but I could think of one common myth is people think, sales is high pressure, sales is sleazy, sales is manipulating people. It is forcing them to do something that they don't want to do. I would say sales. Yeah, I think a lot of people have those myths about sales.
Yeah, absolutely. And on all those instances, sales can be high pressure, sales can be sleazy. All those things can happen, but also the opposite can happen as well. And the thing with selling is, a lot of times people ask me, even when you do unselling, is it manipulation? And there is ethical manipulation. Basically, when you're manipulating something where you're trying to move things around or move something in a way that you want to get a desired result. I mean, that really is manipulation. Manipulation doesn't mean that it's negative, right? But it can be used in a negative way. I like to look at it more as influence, like ethical influence. You're influencing outcome. In fact, there's a great book written by Robert Cialdini called Influence.
Yep, love that book.
I think he's got another one I haven't read. I think it's called Sales Influence. But so the thing is, there's a way to because here's the thing: if there's two people meeting, like let's say for what we do, right, strategy calls, no one wants to waste their time. They don't want to waste their time, right? Most people don't want to waste their time. If they're signing up for a strategy session, there is something that they need, right? Or there's something lacking. So you either want to get to some pleasure point, or they have some pain that you want to take away. That's the thing. If you know that, then what are you going to, the goal of that conversation is not to get them away from you, right? So it is to influence them to work with you. But there's an ethical way to do it, and there's a non-ethical, there's a high pressure way to do it as well, right? Which is, regardless of what they say, if they, it's because sometimes they may not be a good fit. And that's one thing that I was saying. If there's something you're not going to be able to do, don't just get the sale. Like if you're not going to be able to do weekly calls, or if you're not going to, be able to satisfy something that you think somebody else can, for you to say yes to get them to say yes, that's unethical. That's more, to me, high pressure type. But yeah, so if you truly believe that your program, your coaching, your influence, your time spent with you is going to make a big difference, then yes, it's great to ethically move them towards saying that yes at the end, because their life is going to be better.
Makes sense, man. And you've trained a lot of people within unselling training, so the unselling system. So I'm curious, what have you seen like this common thread limiting belief that runs through a lot of your students?
Yes. Have I seen limiting beliefs?
Like a common limiting belief that runs through a lot of your students, and if so, what is that?
Yeah, it's the fear of selling. It's really what it is. It's a fear of selling. There's a couple of things. One is, most people hate to ask for money.
Yeah.
And this isn't just coaches and consultants, even a lot of salespeople I work with. You notice there's state, like Tony Robbins talks a lot about state, right? Peak performance, your state. And I noticed, like because I listen to a lot of my clients' calls, is they're excited. And right there when they ask for money, goes, yeah, and then the next, you don't even hear them. I'm like, well, what are they saying? So if I can't hear them, let alone there, and then I always tell people, it's not osmosis. Yeah. It's not like at the end of the call, they're going to go, oh my gosh, Anthony, you are so dadgum amazing. Here's my checkbook. Here's a blank check. They're not going to do that. You got to ask for the money. So the two biggest things, there is a fear of selling because most people feel they have to sell a certain way. And then there's the fear of asking for money. Now, when people go through my program, they really resonate with everything I talk about. So that fear is gone. The selling part, or ask for the money, is usually still a challenge for people until I get to that when I do my training. But once I talk about what it is, they get over that as well. Because it's not, the other thing about high pressures, there's always a lot of technique using at the end.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of alternative closes,
Yep.
or hey, what's your credit card number? Let me verify the name on your credit. It's just like to me, you know, I mean, it's just a way that I don't usually do my clothes. When people put my clothes, it's very boring. It's very basic. It's listen, hey, the next steps to become my client.
Yeah.
But I have 80% of the people most of the time say yes. So, you know, all the stuff you do beforehand makes a huge difference. I would say those are the two biggest things that they have limiting beliefs is
So
just
good.
about selling because they don't feel comfortable the way
Yeah.
they've been taught, and then asking for money.
Do you think when it comes to the asking this for money thing, it's just because usually every human has some type of relationship with money, whether it's good or bad, it doesn't matter, but they have some type of relationship with money. And then whatever that relationship is, they then project their own relationship with money onto the prospective client. And that's why they're afraid of asking for money.
Yes, I think that's a huge part of it. That's huge. And also, I just really truly believe that a lot of times people like to have happy experiences. They like positive. Like if you're going to go out to a nightclub and you see a attractive girl and you want to ask them to dance, nobody wants to go up and ask them to dance and get a no. You know, most people want to get a yes. But so people like happy experiences. Like they may go up and say hi and that's it, and it's happy. That no usually gets people into a negative area. So a lot of times, even if they get, I want to think about it, there's usually a sigh of relief. Whew, oh my gosh, okay, they're gonna think about it and get back to me, and then they'll buy later, you know. And most people don't,
Nope.
because they just don't want to get that no.
Yep.
But I always tell people, if you do things the right way, right? If you smile at her across the way, you know, uh, just do positive things. Maybe just go say hi, straight conversation. A lot of little positives before. Then there's a chance of you getting that yes is greater, right?
Yeah.
I would say that a lot of the things you do beforehand, right, it makes a big difference. But yes, I would say that the
Awesome.
way that they look at it, I think most people, human nature is that they just don't like negativity.
Yeah, I totally would agree. A lot of the things that we talk about on this podcast specifically is the relationship between who somebody is being and the things that they do. So even in the game of sales, there is a being component and then there's the doing component. And part of the being component, we'll just kind of use the illustration of walking up to the girl, is knowing like here, I'm worthy of this girl, whether she says yes or no. Like her no isn't going to reflect on my worthiness as a human being or my worthiness as a man. So therefore, I'm more inclined to go ask for the dance
Right.
because I'm good here, right? And it also makes the doing a lot easier, whether we get the rejection or not the rejection. The reality is somewhere upon that night, there will be a woman in who I go ask that will dance with me because I've learned to source my own worthiness. And I think a lot of coaches, consultants, and just people in the game of sales as well, they don't take the time to look at the being part of the equation of sales. And this is what keeps them from asking for money because like, oh, I got to prove my worth on this call to be worthy of the money that they're going to give me. Or if I say, you know, hey, are you open to this? Or like, no, well, now I may not be good enough and I may doubt myself rather than knowing I'm good here. Now I can come here and we can find some value exchange on this call. And from that place, the intersection between the being and then the doing, you can become a powerful salesperson. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that intrinsic worth that you had,
Yep.
so important. I mean, I'm always shocked when anyone says no. I mean, I'm like, well, wait a second, you don't want to work with me? But then I don't go into oversell mode because I've already done all the pre-work. So if someone legit doesn't want to work with me, it's mostly because they weren't paying attention. They're used to saying no. They weren't serious from the get-go.
Yep.
And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, I got to tune up my marketing better. You know, because the way that I do my calls, people say yes. Everyone says yes at the end. So if they're not saying yes, the other thing is one of my funnels that I use, I actually text back and forth before I even get on the phone with people, because I don't want to get on a strategy call where they feel high pressure and all these type of things. Or they think that it's going to be that. And I want them to understand beforehand what's going on. So then the call is just about clarifying maybe a couple things, maybe, you know, just some people just want to talk to someone live. But yeah, it's just, I look at it like, I don't get scared. When I ask for money, I ask for the money because that's the only way I'm going to be able to help them. And I'll let them know, hey, listen, next steps, get you on as a client. I want to start getting A, B, C, all the things that they said done for you. So we need to get you on as a client. And then we go from there. And if you do it the right way and you have that good state, yeah, you're going to get a lot of people saying yes.
Awesome, dude. So let's transition a bit. How do you feel somebody can turn, 50 to 70% of their strategy calls into the paying clients without using the high pressure, sleazy sales tactics while staying true to their core values and beliefs?
So when I talk to people, I mean, when I first talk to coaches and consultants, a lot of times they'll tell me that they're not aligned with the way the sales is usually taught. And in fact, they're in sales groups, but they're usually lurkers. Hear that lurking terminology? They don't, interact because they're like, man, all these people are pumping their chest, and I'm not really comfortable with all this type of stuff. So the first thing I would say is don't go against your core values. So when I talk about integrity-based process, it's always about just truly listening and diagnosing people's pain. But the reason I close majority of my sales is when I'm talking to people, again, the marketing is a big piece. So you have to make sure that when you're talking to people, that they are your ideal target market. Do not look to talk to everybody that is breathing, because if they don't need your service in the first part, or they're not at a stage where they haven't even made a sale, and you're talking about scaling up your business, well, they're not your market. So no matter how perfect you do what I teach with on selling, you can still get that no. So once that marketing is dialed down, then it becomes a true conversation. And that's what I always tell people. Talk to your future clients as if they're a family member, as if they're a close friend of yours. So if someone says to you, oh man, I'm having a problem losing weight. Let's say you're wellness or you have a fitness program, right? And they go to you, well, I'm just having problem losing weight, and I've tried a few other things and it's just not working. So you ask the question, you get that answer. And I've listened to certain calls where the coach is like, okay, great. Well, let me ask you something else. And I'm thinking, what the heck? They just told you all this stuff. If your family member told you they're having problems, you would probably say, well, what's going on? Well, what happened? How long ago did this happen? How are you feeling? All these type of follow-up questions. So during the discovery part, so I talk about connect, discover, and then you present, and then you close. In that discovery part, I said you have to find out what their pain is. And it's not just for you, is these people you're talking to, they don't realize themselves. Again, they're not sure why they're on this call. They don't know. And you want to get them on as a client. That was the next step. I watched a video. It says book an appointment. Let me go ahead and do that. I guess this guy is probably going to help me, but they don't always know what it is. So you've got to get a lot of that clear. So I would ask questions like, so when you're saying that you're having trouble losing weight, what do you mean by that? Can you tell me what else have you done? How long have you tried it? What parts of your life has been affected because you haven't been able to lose weight? Well, I haven't been able to play with my kids. We say I haven't played with the kids. What do you mean? Well, it's been a while since I was able to play basketball. Well, how does that make you feel? I mean, did you feel, no, I feel horrible. So that's what you want to do. You want to ask those type of questions, get that emotion to come out, because that they've got to know, dang it, not losing weight's really been impacting my life relation with my wife. I can't play with my kids. I can't go up a flight of stairs. And then when you start talking about presenting, you can say, well, when you said that you wanted to start playing with your kid, I mean, how serious were you about that? And what's going to be different now than it was before? Those are the type of questions you want to ask. And if you do all that the right way, then at the end, when you're telling them, hey, this is what I'm going to do, I've got a program that's designed to help you. For people, it's designed around people that have had problems before. You said you don't want to do these long workouts. Well, guess what? I've got a workout you can do for under 12 minutes a day from home. You don't have to leave your home. So now when you start talking about what you do and you connect it to all the things that they said they had pain with, they're going to start seeing how things are connected. So when you ask them at the end to become a client, they're going to say yes. So the reason I have people going from nothing to, I just had one of my students send me that they've made more money in the last 2 weeks than they did in the fourth quarter of last year.
So good.
They've only been working with me about 3 weeks. And that's the things that I share with them. And that's what the tweaks that they made is. It's just amazing what people can do if they just calm down, dial it down, and go. So when I say core values, yeah, you want to help people, you want to listen, and then you want to give them a plan to act on. So
dude, I love it. I find, because I've been through a lot of sales training myself, so I actually am in a place in life where I like being sold. Not through high pressure, but I like when somebody's taking the time to be with me, listen, ask, intelligent questions, and really uncover what I'm really there for. I feel like so seen, so heard. I'm just like, man, I want to give this person money. I just want to work with them. And then so when I find other people who are just pushing their agenda, there's a big part of me where I'm like, fuck off, get the fuck out of here. I don't have time for this.
I get turned off as well. And just like you, I'm easy to sell to if if it's done the right way. I love buying stuff to a fault sometimes, but yeah, I think a lot of the top sales guys out there, they really are not challenging to be sold to if their needs are met. And that's the
Yeah.
thing, if their wants, their desires are met. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, every human being on the planet, I believe, wants to be seen and heard. And so salespeople will get that. Hey, just let me see them and let me hear them. Like you're going to be hands and above pretty much everybody in the marketplace.
And just that one point there can double some people's sales, because a lot of times I listen to calls, people are cutting off the other person and not listening.
Yeah.
It just, some of my clients, students, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was even doing that. And most people don't. They're not purposely being rude, but there's a stat out there that when two people are talking, 45%, 40 to 45% time, the other person is thinking about what to say when they're hearing it. They may hear something, oh my gosh, I know exactly what to say to that. Another 40 to 45% of the time, they're thinking where they can butt in. Where can I interject? Where it doesn't look like I'm cutting them off. So literally only about 10% of the time are people being heard. So if you can flip that, stop cutting people off, just getting complete thoughts out and then responding, it's going to make a huge difference, because most people out there aren't doing that. And you're already distinguishing yourself from the market from doing something as simple as listening. Guess what? When you do it, you're going to pick up on some things that you didn't think were going on. And oh my gosh, I know I can help this person because what they just said. And then when you start to presenting, now that you heard the complete story and the situation, then you can address it a lot better. But so listening without cutting people off, which is a challenge, you really got to work at it, can make such a big difference there.
Yeah, dude. And I believe the reason it's a challenge for most people, I find time and time again, it's not a blanket statement, but it's pretty on point. Most people who are interrupting people, again, are looking outside of themselves for significance. They're like, well, I need to control the conversation. I like hearing my own voice, because inside I'm not sourcing my own worthiness. I feel very insecure. And so any silence, it's very awkward for them. They're like, oh God, all of that inadequacy comes up. So that's why they're usually over talking people. And so for those people who have done some personal growth work and some self-work, and they've learned how to source their own well-being and their own joy and their own happiness, the sales process becomes a lot of fun. And it really just becomes a real, honest, genuine conversation where the salesperson has the capacity and the courage to ask some really uncomfortable questions that really helps expose the real problem that's really going on for a lot of people. And that is like what I found really positions people as experts, those who are willing to ask those difficult questions, to hold space for the answers to those difficult questions, and help the potential client see what the real problem is, and then help them be like, well, I have the solution. That's pretty much what like new sales seems to be.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had people tell me, oh my gosh, I've never been asked this question by anyone, not even my spouse. I've had people crying on the phone with me. And the thing is, and the other thing is, a lot of times people think that it's just the specific products that they sell or the packaging, or that's what people buy. It has nothing to do with it. I've had people that have spent, 50 grand with me, but getting coaching or something. And then after the conversation's over, they're like, what did I just buy? What did I just get? So it's not the product, it's not the service, it's how you make people feel. And if they really truly believe that working with you is going to help them overall. And, I mean, analytical sales, it's a little more challenging. That's why B2B and things like that. I've got different programs that work with B2B, but for coaches, it's when you get people that are emotional. So a lot of, like I said, relationship coaches, mindset coaches, wellness coaches, Reiki healers, dating, all this type of process, it's huge, because that is all around the emotional well-being, physically and mentally, of getting people from A to where they're at to where they want to be. It's huge. And if you can just master that, you're going to find people are going to not even remember or know what the heck they're buying. Do I get weekly coaching with that? What exactly did I buy? And that's when you know that you've gotten there, because you truly listen, and then you've heard, and you're giving them suggestions on what they need to do next.
Do you find in B2B, I'm just curious because I don't know the answer to this question. Do you find in B2B that most of the sales, the game really is more about a battle between, are you going to trust and respect me, and who's alpha, more than, all the details and emotions and all of that?
Yeah, B2B, emotion is not huge. There's B2B is a total different animal. A lot of times you're not dealing with the decision maker initially at first at all. So you got to go through certain levels. Then there's payment cycles, which could be net 45, which turns into net 180. So it's just totally different. But yeah, the emotion is not huge. They know the know, like, and trust part is a lot different. It's more that you have, if you're branded well, if they feel that you can deliver, you've got good customer case studies and testimonials.
Yeah.
Those type of things are much more prevalent and more important than the emotional side in B2B. Absolutely.
The reason I ask is because I've closed some pretty sizable B2B things in the past. And the old me, before understanding the game, would have tried to show up, improve, and have all my shit together. The new me totally took prize frame. And so when the CEO of the company joined us for the sales calls, because I had a referral, but I'd never met him, I knew the rest of the team very well. He was like, so who are you and what can you do for me? Like that's how he started off the sales conversation. And I knew if I said anything after that, like, I'm already positioned in beta, he's already in alpha, and I'm going to lose the fucking deal. Right. And so I just kind of leaned in and I was like, dude, if you don't know who I am and what I can do for you already, then we can just go ahead and end the call. And he's like, all right, well, that's out of the way. And then we got to like have the trust and respect on a mutual ground. And then we could start, figuring out what are the logistics to help them get what they wanted. And we're able to close the deal and all of that. But it was just interesting. Like, that was the dynamic that was playing on this subconscious level, was like, who's alpha? Can I trust you? Can I respect you? Do you trust and respect yourself? And I found time and time again, for me, sometimes it's almost like leaning in and then push, giving a little push, and then, expecting them to come back. Just using a little bit of prize framing's been really fun.
Yeah, that's actually so true. But here's the thing: that's exactly the same way in what we do as well. It's so important that you really establish yourself as the expert, or they like to say the alpha, because so many times people get back on their heels when they start asking, well, how much does it cost? What exactly is this? They'll just get started. And again, dial in your marketing. A lot of that's your marketing. But I don't. If I get questions like that, I'll just, oh, you know what? We're going to get to that. Just cut it right down. And I establish myself, because if I'm the expert, right, if I'm the go-to person that they're coming to help them out of whatever the situation is, I'm definitely not going to let them take control and act like they're the expert, because at the end of the day, they're going to buy from the expert. And if they think they're the expert, they're not buying from you. So it's so important that people, so again, when I go on something, that's what a big part of it is, establishes yourself before you start the call as an expert. And then when those calls starts, I tell people, do not go into, Google Anthony, right? You're there to answer every question that they got. It's not how it works. You have got to, let them know who is the one going. Now, that's not to say what they're saying is not important. That's why you want to ask those questions, to get that out. But you're the one who's asking those questions, because the one who asks the most questions and gets those deep answers, they're the ones that are going to get that sale.
Exactly. It's like you're the doctor, right? Like, you're the doctor, you're the expert, you know what it's going to take to heal the specific scenario, but you need to ask a bunch of questions so we can diagnose like what's really going on, so we can then prescribe the correct solution, right?
Yeah. So somebody asks what the price. Well, you know what? I only talk about price with people that I think are going to be potential clients. We just started the call. Let's make sure you can say something like that. Don't feel like, so a lot of times people will, or they'll email the price back, or before I get on the call, how much does it cost? You email that price, you're never going to get on the phone with them. If you tell them the price from the start, so you can say, I only discuss that with potential clients. I'm not really sure where we're at yet, but we're going to get to that. And then you go right into your question. So what brought you on this call? And that's what you're doing. The same thing you do with a CEO. Yep. That's exactly what you're doing. So that's important in the B2B world, and also the B2C as well. Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's talk about follow-up a little bit.
Okay.
How much follow-up do you think is normally required to close the deal?
So I do a lot of mine. Mine is based on price point. It really revolves around price point. Usually if it's 10 grand or less, I typically close right on the call. But I've sold coaching packages up to $150,000 over the phone. And sometimes they will take multiple calls. Depends on how the funnel is set up. Some of my private clients, I actually take a look at their funnel. We do some testing and things like that. Sometimes you can do it in maybe 3 to 5 calls. Sometimes you need more than that, right? Sometimes it really depends on it. You have to have a follow-up system in place. You definitely need to have it. The worst thing to do is when you get off the call, whether they're a client or not. So let's go with if they're not a client. If they're not a client, they have to think about it. That's one of the worst things to do. And no matter how much you really follow up, if you don't have a follow-up date set and things like that, like they say, hey, listen, I have to bring my wife in on it, or my spouse, and you say, okay, get back to me. that's pretty much done. You're not most likely going to hear from them again. So if it's not a client, you have to have a firm, specific date for follow up, and also what's going to happen between that time and then. Like, let's go over. Let me just make sure we're on the same page. What exactly you're going to do? Well, I'm going to check out this. I'm going to do that. If they buy your product, yeah, you definitely have to have some kind of follow up so they know what the next step is. Because again, if they buy, you don't want them to have buyer's remorse, right? So you have to have some kind of immediate type of follow up.
So
If your
good, yeah.
program, if your program takes a week to implement or set up by your team, well, you need to make sure that there's stuff going on during that time, so they feel like, hey, they just took my money and I don't know what the heck I'm supposed to be doing. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. So yeah, follow up if they're not a client or a client, it's huge because there's a state that's created on that call, and you don't want to lose it by having poor follow up.
So good. I have found for one of our clients, they started having a little bit more refunds as they were closing more and more and more and more and more deals. And it was on a high ticket thing. And what was happening is before they would hop onto the onboarding call, there would have been like a week delay because they were closing so many deals. Just it was a scheduling thing, right? So we had to start pre-framing the internal fear and self-doubt that was going to arise after somebody had already bought. And so we did that via email, and we did that through some audio messages. So we just let them know, hey, you just made it. And we'd also do it on the call. We'd almost pre-frame after the close. We'd pre-frame, hey, this may happen for you. It happens for a lot of people. And just by pre-framing the doubt and all of the insecurities that naturally arise after making a decision, it totally reduced their refunds. And everybody coming into the program had, such a much more enjoyable experience. They're retaining clients longer. So it was just really interesting. Those little small tweaks, that little follow-up process made a big, big difference.
It's huge. I mean, one of the things in one of my programs, I'll send them a bonus video like right away. Hey, listen, I didn't talk about this, but this is a training that you can start implementing now. Then I have them go into our Facebook group and introduce themselves. Awesome. And, just get different things like that. Or if you have people on your team to, give them a welcome call, or a welcome email, and then just give them and then give them an action plan and let them know what's going on. Like you're saying, that's so huge. It's absolutely huge. And so, yeah, getting a customer is a challenge for a lot of, not just, what we do, but even in business. Yeah. You acquire a customer, and then that follow-up. Some companies do an immense job, awesome job, and some just do a poor job. And if you can do that follow-up, like, some programs I've got, they'll send me a physical package that wasn't talked about, or a thank you card, that's in velvet, in velour, and things like that. It's just, there's different ways to do it, but if you focus on it, it's just going to help so much. And then they're going to spread the word as well. So you have a raving fan now, right? That can get you some referrals. So there's really, yeah, that's huge. I don't really talk about this part on a lot of podcasts and calls I do, but it's huge. It's really,
yeah. This is the secret sauce, right? This is the secret sauce right here.
Absolutely.
At what point do you find follow-up is becoming too pushy? I hear that question a lot. It's definitely online a lot. People ask me a lot. What do you find is that fine line to walk?
Well, if I'm pre-framing myself as an expert, experts don't do, like almost beg for the sale. I mean, so it's really important how you do the follow-up. So if you're an expert and you leave that call basically letting them know, hey, I don't have a tickler file, I don't do a whole lot of follow-up. If you don't take advantage of this is the last day for this deal. And then 2 weeks later, you're offering the same deal, you lose credibility, and you're like, oh, this guy says it to everybody. So, but if you want to deliver value, like if you say, listen, I'm going to follow up. The other thing, just in line with what I just said, if you have a deal that you give them, do not offer that deal after the deadline. That is like the worst thing to do. So you can have a different bonus or a different deal, but do not lose credibility by giving false scarcity or just some kind of thing that doesn't make sense. But yeah, you can have email file, put them on an email file, because a lot of times people will buy later. They have to be exposed to a few times before they buy. But usually if it's on the strategy call, I would say, just a few follow-ups that are aligned with what you promised them. And then if you want, you can put them on a list and maybe they can, buy something down the road. But I would not want to pre-frame. I mean, I wouldn't, if I pre-frame myself as expert, I'm not going to be following them up where it looks like this guy's desperate to get a sale. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. I totally know what you mean. And for those people who think there's a difference between extroverts and introverts, and only extroverts can be good salespeople, do you believe that's true, or can introverts also be really good salespeople?
Most of the coaches I deal with are probably more introverts. In fact, there's a expression called ambivert also. I thought it should have been omnivert, but it's ambivert for people that have both qualities of being an introvert. And I would say more people have those qualities. Even the people you see speaking from stage, you're like, oh my gosh, these people are awesome. They're like this all the time. A lot of them I talk, they're like, no, if I'm not on stage, I don't like talking to anybody. I'm just very private. There's a lot of those stage speakers you see. So that's another thing. Don't assume because you see something that people are unlike you. So a lot of the coaches I deal with are introverts. They are introverts or ambiverts, not specifically extroverts.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Yeah, anyone can do that. It's just, there's nothing wrong with that. But that's not going to prevent you from becoming good at sales. What's going to prevent you from being good at sales is up here.
Yeah.
All it is, really, it is. It's not Facebook ads, okay? You don't have to know every little thing about CBOs and retargeting and pixelation. That stuff scares me. That's why I've got people on my team that handle all that stuff with ClickFunnels, Infusionsoft, all that kind of stuff. I don't deal with any of that. But training-wise, sales-wise, all that stuff I do myself because I enjoy it, and that doesn't take technical expertise to get good at that.
Amazing, dude. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. Like we've covered some mindset stuff. We've covered some tactical, some active listening stuff. We've talked about some secret sauce stuff about after you close the sale, how to retain them a little bit and reduce refunds. If somebody follows the advice and the wisdom that you've shared with them today, what do you know is possible for them?
If they follow just off what we talked about today and you go back and revisit, you're going to be able to serve more people. That's what I tell people. If you are wanting to serve people, if your goal is to make money, you can make more money with this, but I always tell people don't ever focus on that being the main part. In fact, I always talk about detaching yourself from any outcome and the sell. But if you focus on what we teach today, you're going to be able to help more people. You're going to be able to get your message out to more people and serve more people, which will make you more money as well. Right. So I would say, yes, implement this, believe you can do it. So just tell yourself, you know what, I can have a conversation with somebody I care about. I care about these people. I'm listening to what Anthony and Tiji are telling me, and I know I can do this, and I know I can do this. And you're going to be amazed at what can happen by just being real, listening to more people. Listening to what they say, get more people to serve, make more money, be happy, get your goals. So yes, that's what I would say.
Awesome. And dude, on the flip side, for those people who are going to listen to this, and there's going to be a couple of them, not all of them, but there's going to be a couple of them, and I always like anchoring this. For those people who listen, there's like, I don't know. I think I'm just going to continue giving out Band-Aids on sales calls, and just kind of just being nonchalant. And it's just, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Like if they continue embodying that bullshit, what's at stake for those people?
I would like to say this a lot, but sometimes they just don't care. People, because I know exactly what you're talking about, and I do I do what I can to keep those people away from through my marketing, what I position. A lot of them just don't care. That's the thing. They just like to make excuses. Oh, this doesn't work because this happened, or it's working for that guy because they're doing this. So I find that a lot of those types of people are just, they just enjoy being around other negative people. They bring that to the table. But if they do implement this, it's just amazing what can happen. It really, really is. And there's some people that aren't negative in their mindset, but they're just not action takers. They're just like, oh, you know what? I'll get to it when I get to it. Or I know Anthony did this podcast. It looks like it can help me, but I'll watch it in a couple of weeks. Those type of people, they're just not action takers. They're like, they just want to be a part of whatever's going on. I always tell people, don't be a part of just listening, do it. Take action. They always say that imperfect action always trumps perfect inaction, right? If you don't take action, nothing's going to happen. But yeah, if you can take action and be positive, stop making excuses, just stop saying, because, but unfortunately, I see a lot of those people that's all they do. They're perennial excuse makers and all that type of thing. So, but yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff we talked about that if they can take action, amazing things can happen.
Yeah, man, it just comes down to, are they willing to either be committed to the reasons? Or are they going to be committed to the results? Those are pretty much the only two options. Now, I know you have a program called the Unselling System, and people can learn more about that at unsellingtraining.com. That's unsellingtraining.com. So what is that program? Do you mind telling us more about it and who's it's for and all this stuff?
And they don't even have to opt in. There's no opt-in. You can just go to, just like Anthony said, unsellingtraining.com, just how it sounds. So I created Unselling System years ago because unselling is just, if you know who Frank Kern is, I was part of his mastermind, and we went and we were brainstorming, and he was like, dude, you're like the anti-high pressure guy, right? So we got to think of something anti. So I was like, well, how about unselling? He goes, perfect, that's it. So that's how we came out. And so it's a no pressure way of doing sales. So I'm a conversion expert. So when you go to unsellingtraining.com, it's a real short video, and it talks about the 3 pieces that I feel you need to have when you're doing your strategy calls. So yeah, it just talks about, what they need to start implementing. And then if they like what they see, then they can always book a call with our team, and then we can see how we can implement that into your business. So so that's what it is, man. It's just
Brilliant. And if people want to learn more about you, they want to connect with you, be human with you, where can they do that at?
So they can actually go to, if they go to my website, tgthomas.com,
okay.
There's ways to connect. There's a lot of blog posts. I'm a video guy, but I actually sat down and wrote some blogs, because a lot of times people are asking about, because there's things I talk about, in my program about value and positioning and, all these type of things. So if you want some good content, again, you don't have to opt in. You just go to tgthomas.com. And let me see what else. I've got a YouTube channel, Unselling System. So if you go to, just search Unselling System. I think it's just youtube.com/the Unselling System. But if you forget that, you can just search Unselling System. So I'm on YouTube, YouTube, Facebook, and my blog, and then Unselling Training are usually where people keep in touch with me.
Cool, man. Well, thank you so much, dude, for being here. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Really appreciate it, brother. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right.
Well, there you have it, my friend. Tiji Thomas in the house. I feel we've covered a lot of ground when it comes to the art of closing sales. Now, have you consider sales is really an art form. It's not like you learn all there is to know and boom, you've arrived to the destination. I mean, the best salespeople I know are always open to learning and improving. They're like completely devoted to honing their skill set. And it's like this lifelong commitment thing, you know what I mean? So if you're listening to this episode because you know it's time for you to up-level your sales game, I hope this episode brought you a lot of value. I know personally I learned a few things from Tiji, just from creating this episode. So thank you so much for checking this episode out. Now let me ask you a question. Do you want to take your sales game to the next level, but you're not 100% sure just what tools you'll need to make that happen? Well, I will tell you one of the tools that we didn't cover today is increasing your levels of core power. I found time and time again when people increase their levels of core power, which impact who they're being in the midst of the things that they're doing, they increase their levels of income influence as a natural byproduct. So if you're serious about increasing your closing rate and making more money, I highly recommend you download my book called Mindset is Not Enough. And you could download that for free by just going to AJAMYX, that's AJAMYX.com/book. So thank you, my friend, for joining me here for this episode of the Anthony John Amyx podcast. Until next, my friend, I'm out. Peace. Well, that's all I've got for this episode of the Anthony John Amyx podcast, but we have plenty more to help you become unstoppable in life and business. So head on over to AJAMYX.com for exclusive resources, information, and tools to help you break through to a new level of freedom, purpose, and success. I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Bye for now.